everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for today's episode, we will be having another episode of my yes, you're right, another episode of my lit vlogs. So for today's video, we will be talking about the different literary elements. So let's start. So the first literary element we will talk about is the narrative fiction. So the narrative fiction genre involves accounts of a sequence of connected events told through step-by-step or scene-by-scene narration. Books in the narrative genre can be somewhat folklore-ish in nature, as they are often stories passed down from generation to generation as moral lessons through past events. Under the narrative fiction is the allegory. So, allegory is a symbolic fictional narrative that conveys a meaning not explicitly set forth in the narrative. Allegory, which encompasses such forms as fable, parable, and apologue, may have meaning on two or more levels that the reader can understand only through an interpretative process. Another one is an epic. So, an epic is a long narrative poem recounting heroic deeds. In literary usage, the term encompasses both oral and written compositions. Another one is a folktale. So the oral fictional tale, from whatever ultimate origin, is practically universal both in time and place. Differing from legend or tradition, which is usually believed, the oral fictional tale gives the storyteller absolute freedom as to credibility so long as he stays within the limits of local taboos and tells tales that please. So another one is a novel. A novel is an invented prose narrative of considerable length and a certain complexity that deals imaginatively with human experience, usually through a connected sequence of events involving a group of people in a specific setting. So another one is the romance. So romance in literary form, usually characterized by its treatment of chivalry that came into being in France in the mid-12th century. So another one is a satire. So the formal definition of satire is the use of humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices. So there are two important things to remember about satire. First is that it makes fun of the person, idea, or institution. And the second one is its purpose is not just to entertain, but also to inform or make people think. So another one is a short story. So what is a short story? It is a brief fictional prose narrative that is shorter than a novel and that usually deals with only a few characters. The short story is usually concerned with a single effect conveyed in only one or a few significant episodes or scenes. Another literary element is the essay. So an essay is an analytic, interpretative, or critical literary composition, usually much shorter and less systematic and formal than a dissertation or thesis, and it usually deals with its subject from a limited and often personal point of view. So another literary element is the biography. So the biography, as a form of literature, commonly considered non-fictional, is the subject of which is the life of an individual, one of the oldest forms of literary expression. It seeks to recreate in words the life of a human being as understood from the historical or personal perspective of the author, by drawing upon all available evidence, including that retained in memory, as well as written, oral, and pictorial material. So another literary element is the drama. So a drama in literature refers to the performance of written dialogue and stage action. It's a literary genre that allows actors to act out a writer's words directly to an audience, but there's more than one type of literary genre. The first one is the classical tragedy. A classical tragedy is a story of a hero or heroine who experiences a reversal of fortune set into motion by the gods as a result of hubris. Second one is the comedy. It is a type of drama or other art form which has a chief object of which, according to modern notions, is to amuse. Another one is a history plays. A history play, also known as chronicle play, is a dramatic work where the events of the plot are either partially or entirely drawn from history. Another one is the modern tragedy. Whereas in classical tragedy, the protagonist is of a noble or prestigious standing, modern tragedy is more likely to focus on a common man. Another one is a ritual drama. A ritual drama was an important feature in antiquity, more important than the paucity of evidence suggests. No scripts have survived, since they were generally unnecessary, though we have a few accounts from inscriptions or literary sources about what was done and said. Another one is the tragicomedy. When you combine the elements of comedy and tragedy, you get a tragicomedy. Tragicomedies are more complex than a drama with a few jokes, or a comedy with a serious scene. Some ways to tell if you're watching a tragicomedy are if it has a serious storyline told in a humorous, sardonic, or snide way. Next is that it has tragically flawed characters whose actions don't result in death. The next one is it has an ambiguous theme. The next one is it has broad characters who act in classically comical ways. And lastly, neither a happy nor a comic ending. So another literary element is the poetry. So poetry, as we all know, is a literature that evokes a concentrated imaginative awareness of experience or a specific emotional response through language chosen and arranged for its meaning, sound, and rhythm. There are various types of poetry. The first one is descriptive or observational lyrics. So, a descriptive poem is a poem that contains a large amount of descriptive detail. They might take as their subject something visual, for instance, and describe its characteristics in depth. So, descriptive poetic styles might be incorporated into narrative or lyric types of poetry. So, the second one is the dramatic poem or dramatic monologue. So, dramatic poetry, also known as dramatic monologue, is meant to be spoken or acted. A monologue is a speech given by one character to another, or by one character to the audience. So it is also known as dramatic verse when it's not in poetic form. Another one is the lyric poetry. So a lyric poetry uses song-like and emotional words to describe a moment, an object, a feeling, or a person. So there are 4 types of lyric poetry. The first one being the ballad. So a ballad is a type of poem that tells a story and was traditionally set to music. The second one is an ode. This is an elevated poem that pays tribute to a person, idea, place, or another concept. The third one is the pastoral. A pastoral poem explores the fantasy of withdrawing from modern life to live in an idyllic rural setting. So there are another type of pastoral, which is the elegy. This is a reflective poem to honor the dead. So the next one is the sonnet. So this is the most formal of the more common lyric poems. Unlike the ballad, it has remained in poetic fashion since its creation. So the first type of sonnet is a Petrarchan sonnet. It is divided into 2 distinct stanzas, an octave made up of 2 quatrains, which states the subject of the poem, and a sestet made up of 2 tercets, which offers a development of the subject, a reflection on it, or an application. The second one is the Shakespearean sonnet. A Shakespearean sonnet is a variation of the Italian sonnet tradition. The form evolved in England during and around the time of the Elizabethan era. These sonnets are sometimes referred to as Elizabethan sonnets or English sonnets. The next type of poetry is a narrative poetry. The defining feature of a narrative poem is its plot. Narrative poems feature an entire story, told by one narrator from beginning to end. The next lyric poetry is a satirical poetry. A satirical poem is one that makes fun of some example of vice, foolishness, injustice, or moral failing. So that pretty much sums up all the literary elements. I hope you learned a lot from this episode, and I have more to come. I hope you will stay tuned for that, and please to leave a like and subscribe to my channel.